For 4,000 years, a secret has been hidden in plain sight, dwarfed by the very monuments that conceal it. You've seen the Hollywood epics, whipping overseers, sweating slaves, and brutal labor camps. Every conspiracy theory, from alien architects to lost Atlantean technology, is built on the assumption that the pyramids of Giza were erected by force and magic. But what if the true secret behind the greatest construction project in human history is not about who built them, but why they built them, and the revolutionary, astonishing way they lived? Forget the whips and the chariots. The real jaw-dropping secret is that the pyramids were built by a massive, organized, well-fed, highly skilled workforce who were not enslaved, but rather participated in a national project that was, in many ways, the foundation of the world's first true nation-state. This is the story of the revolutionary economy, the advanced logistics, and the political genius that turned 1,000,000 limestone blocks into the only surviving wonder of the ancient world. And the greatest secret of all? They drank beer, a lot of it. Part 1. The Myth of the Whip and the Truth of the Wage. Chapter 1. The Curse of Hollywood and Herodotus. The popular image of the Great Pyramid of Khufu rising slowly under the lashes of tyrannical pharaohs is one of history's most enduring lies. It's a narrative inherited primarily from two sources, the ancient Greek historian Herodotus and centuries of politically motivated fiction. The Herodotus problem, 5th century BCE. When Herodotus visited Egypt, the Old Kingdom, circa 2686 to 2181 BCE, the era of the pyramid builders, was already 2,000 years old, as ancient to him as the Roman Empire is to us today. The Egyptian priests, eager to impress the Greek traveler, likely spun tales of vast human suffering to inflate the glory of the pharaohs. Herodotus recorded that 100,000 men labored for 20 years, enduring immense hardship. This tale, embellished over millennia, became the historical standard. The biblical misinterpretation. The Exodus narrative concerning Hebrew slavery in Egypt has also been widely misapplied to the Pyramid Age. Archaeological evidence confirms the enslavement of certain populations later in Egyptian history, but the builders of Giza were centuries removed from that context. The Modern Discovery, 1990s. The truth only began to surface in the 1990s with the accidental discovery of a massive, long-lost site, the Tomb of the Pyramid Builders, Haket al-Garab, located just southwest of the Great Pyramid. This site, excavated by Dr. Mark Lenner and Dr. Zahi Hawass, was the turning point. It didn't just contain a few worker tombs. It was a vast city and cemetery that chronicled the day-to-day lives of the people who built the pyramids. This is the story of the revolutionary economy, the advanced logistics, and the political genius that turned 1,000,000 limestone blocks into the only surviving wonder of the ancient world. And the greatest secret of all? They drank beer, a lot of it. What the archaeologists found was astonishing, challenging every preconception about ancient labor. The unbelievable truth of the workers' cemetery. The tombs unearthed at the builders' cemetery, while not as grand as those of the pharaohs, were sophisticated and deeply respected. This was the first and most compelling piece of evidence against the slave hypothesis. 1. Honored burial. Slaves in the ancient world were often dumped into unmarked pits. These builders, however, received honored, organized burials in mud brick structures. They were buried with tools, jars of food, and beer, all the necessities for the afterlife, proving they held an honored social status. 2. Egyptian lineage. The remains of the workers showed they were ethnically Egyptian, drawn from the villages and farms of Upper and Lower Egypt. They were not foreign captives or slaves. 3. Advanced medical care. The most stunning discovery was the forensic evidence on the skeletal remains. Archaeologists found examples of advanced surgical procedures, including successfully amputated limbs, bones set with wooden splints that healed perfectly, and even evidence of brain surgery, trepanning. This level of dedicated post-injury care is the antithesis of how a slave workforce would be treated. If an overseer only cared about labor, an injured worker would be discarded. The builders were evidently valuable state assets who received premier medical attention. The conclusion was inescapable. The pyramids were not built by slaves, but by highly organized, skilled, and nationally proud Egyptian citizens participating in a national service project. The revolutionary logistics, the Khufu worker economy. To manage a project of this scale, moving over 2.3 million stone blocks, some weighing upwards of 80 tons, the Egyptians had to invent, or at least perfect, the science of logistics. The workforce was divided into two rotating shifts, the permanent core group and the temporary seasonal crew. The permanent core, the Zod, who, an estimated 5,000 permanent, highly skilled craftsmen, stonecutters, masons, engineers, architects, and foremen. Their status: these were full-time employees of the state who lived with their families year-round in the worker city. Their housing was solid, their diet excellent, and their skills were passed down generationally. The seasonal workforce, the Pharaohs, who, up to 20,000 temporary laborers who rotated in 3 to 4 month shifts. When? This labor was strategically scheduled during the inundation season, late July to November, the annual flooding of the Nile. When the Nile flooded, farmers could not work their fields. The Pharaonic government utilized this compulsory downtime to mobilize the national agricultural workforce. This was the real secret of the logistics. The government converted compulsory agricultural downtime into productive national infrastructure time. The workers were not forced to build, they were deployed to build during a time when they otherwise would have been idle in consuming stored resources. The payroll, beer, bread, and bureaucracy. Forget currency. The wages paid to the pyramid builders were far more substantial and practical, a phenomenal amount of food and resources. The worker city wasn't just housing, it was a gigantic industrial-scale kitchen complex designed to feed an army. The discoveries in the city revealed extensive bakeries, fish processing facilities, and evidence of immense livestock consumption. Dr. Richard Redding calculated the daily protein intake required. 1. Daily meat rations. The permanent core workers were fed an estimated 4,000 pounds of meat, beef, goat, sheep daily. This was a protein-rich diet far exceeding that of a typical peasant farmer. The state wasn't just feeding them, it was overfeeding them as a form of payment and motivation. 2. The beer economy, the real fuel. The most crucial payment was beer. Egyptian beer was thick, nutritious, and low in alcohol content, more like a liquid bread or gruel. It was the safe, central source of hydration and calories in a dry environment. The standard ration for a common laborer was estimated to be 10 loaves of bread and 2 jars of beer per day. The power of the scribe. This immense logistics feat required a phenomenal bureaucracy. The pyramids were an administrative marvel, managed by thousands of scribes who meticulously recorded the incoming grain, the distribution of beer, the rotation of the files, and the inventory of stone. The power of the pharaoh was fundamentally underwritten by the efficiency of his accountants. The pyramid builders, therefore, were paid exceptionally well in the only currency that mattered: guaranteed food, excellent housing, superior health care, and large rations of the national beverage. They were motivated less by the whip and more by pride, piety, and an unparalleled social contract. Part 2. The Architecture of Belief and the God King. Chapter 2. The Vertical Ascent to Immortality. The question shifts from how the pyramids were built to why. The answer lies in the unique theology of the Old Kingdom, where the pharaoh was not merely a ruler, but the literal incarnation of the god Horus while alive and the god Osiris after death. The pyramids were not just tombs, they were sophisticated, monumental machines designed to facilitate the pharaoh's transformation and ensure the continued stability, ma'at, of the cosmos. The purpose of the pyramid, the Benben stone. The pyramid shape itself was deeply symbolic. It represented the Benben, the primeval mound that rose from the chaotic waters of Nu, chaos, at the moment of creation. By building his tomb in this form, the pharaoh was ensuring his own rebirth and symbolically recreating the moment the world began, guaranteeing that the cycle of the sun and the Nile would continue for Egypt. The purpose of the pyramid, the Benben stone. The pyramid shape itself was deeply symbolic. It represented the Benben, the primeval mound that rose from the chaotic waters of Nu, chaos, at the moment of creation. By building his tomb in this form, the pharaoh was ensuring his own rebirth and symbolically recreating the moment the world began, guaranteeing that the cycle of the sun and the Nile would continue for Egypt. The pyramid was essentially a vertical launch pad for the pharaoh's Ka, life force, and Ba, soul, propelling him directly to the northern stars, the imperishable ones. The social contract, building Ma'at. The national undertaking of building the pyramids served a profound political function that unified Egypt more effectively than any law. The Egyptian concept of Ma'at is crucial here. Ma'at means cosmic order, justice, truth, and balance. The pharaoh's primary duty was to maintain Ma'at against the forces of Isfet, chaos, unifying the north and south. By summoning workers from distant provinces in Upper, South, and Lower North Egypt to a single, gigantic national project, the pharaoh was physically unifying the two lands. The men who spent 4 months hauling stones together shared a common experience, a common purpose, and common rations, fostering a national identity that transcended provincial loyalty. The pyramid was the physical embodiment of a unified Egypt. A public works engine. The project demanded the construction of massive infrastructure, canals, ports, roads, all of which improved the lives of the populace even after the pyramid was finished. It was an enormous economic stimulus package, ensuring food and employment during the downtime. A statement of stability. The ability to command, feed, and execute a multi-decade project of this complexity was the ultimate demonstration of pharaonic power and the stability of the state. It inspired awe and obedience not through cruelty but through spectacular organizational success. The Giza necropolis was thus the ultimate form of political theater, a living proof that the pharaoh was strong enough to guarantee Ma'at, ensuring the prosperity of all Egyptians. The secret waterways, the missing link. How exactly did the Egyptians move the massive blocks, especially the pink granite casing stones weighing up to 80 tons from Aswan, hundreds of miles away? The standard theory of rolling blocks over logs is physically impossible for the heaviest stones on uneven sand. The true secret involved water, not manpower. Archaeological exploration in the 2010s uncovered the remains of an ancient, now dried up, navigable channel of the Nile, known as the Khufu Harbor Complex. The canal system. The engineers of the Old Kingdom built an intricate system of canals and feeder basins connected to the main Nile channel. These canals allowed heavy barges loaded with stone from the distant quarries of Tura, limestone, and Aswan, granite, to sail directly to a purpose-built dock mere meters from the Giza Plateau. The sledge system. The blocks were transported over the final meters not by rolling, but by using massive, wet wooden sledges dragged over layers of wet sand. A discovery in the 2014 journal Physical Review Letters confirmed this revolutionary technique. It was found that pouring water onto the sand in front of the sledges reduces the necessary pulling force by 50%. This allowed smaller teams of men to move impossibly heavy objects. The true logistical feat was therefore the mastery of hydroengineering and friction reduction, turning the flooding Nile, chaos, into a tool for cosmic order, Ma'at. The Great Pyramid wasn't built on dry land, it was built right next to a massive man-made port. Part 3. The Builder's City and the Architects of Giza. Chapter 3. Life in the City of the Workers. The excavations at the worker city, Hayt el Garab, have provided an unprecedented look into the highly structured, almost military-like life of the Pharaohs and Zod. The city itself was a microcosm of the entire project, perfectly planned, organized, and efficiently run. The barracks. The temporary workers lived in long, identical barracks blocks, divided into large, highly organized galleries. Each gallery likely housed a file, a rotating crew of several thousand men, further divided into smaller, self-managing ZEP teams. This hierarchical, military-like structure was essential for coordination.
The Giza butcher shop. The remnants of the colossal kitchens were a revelation. Bones from cattle, sheep, and goats showed that the animals were slaughtered and processed at an industrial scale. The massive amount of high-quality beef found confirms the worker's status as skilled and highly valued labor. This was not the diet of forced labor. It was the diet of an elite national construction corps. The village of the foreman. The permanent residents, the master craftsmen and engineers, lived in more comfortable, separated housing, demonstrating the clear social hierarchy present even among the builders. These were the men who oversaw the daily operations, translating the architect's designs into reality. The architect's mind. Hemiunu and the power of the plan. The entire project was overseen by a single figure, the chief architect and grand vizier, Hemiunu, the nephew of Pharaoh Khufu. His tomb and status. Hemiunu's tomb, located near the Great Pyramid, is evidence of his profound status. His statue, now in the Pelizaeus Museum, depicts a man with the corpulence of immense wealth and sedentary power, a high-ranking bureaucrat, not a manual laborer. The lost plans. Hemiunu's genius lay in the planning. The precision of the Great Pyramid, its sides are aligned to within 3 inches of perfect north and its base is level within 1 inch, required not just labor, but decades of meticulous astronomical observation, geometry, and resource management. Hemiunu wasn't just building a tomb, he was building a geometrically perfect reflection of the heavens on earth. The true secret of the pyramids is therefore the perfection of centralized, intelligent organization under a unified political and religious ideology. It wasn't brute force. It was brain power and bureaucracy, fueled by beer and beef, all directed towards a singular, profound religious purpose, ensuring the immortality of the God-King and the cosmic order of the Egyptian nation. Part 4. The King's Grand Design and the Engineering Paradox. Chapter 4. Khufu, the Forgotten Tyrant. The man who commissioned the Great Pyramid, Khufu, Greek Cheops, remains one of the most enigmatic and poorly documented rulers of the Old Kingdom, c. 2589 to 2566 BCE. Despite commanding the labor and resources for the largest single structure on Earth, almost no monuments or statues of him survive, a paradox that hints at the true nature of his power. The later Egyptian memory of Khufu, largely filtered through the Westcar papyrus, a much later collection of court tales, paints him as a cruel and capricious tyrant, constantly searching for new miracles and magic, and willing to commit great cruelties. However, this later view likely reflects the reaction to the unprecedented, almost totalitarian power he wielded to accomplish the Giza project. The price of precision. Khufu's ultimate high was the perfect, terrifying efficiency of his state. To achieve the sheer scale and geometric perfection of the Great Pyramid, Khufu centralized power absolutely, eliminating regional independence and redirecting the nation's entire economic output towards a singular goal. The lack of surviving temples or monuments from his reign suggests that all available skilled labor, materials, and funds were funneled exclusively into his funerary complex. The pharaoh's personal glory was the state's glory. The Great Pyramid, originally standing 481 feet tall, now 455 feet, due to the loss of its pyramidon and casing, is a staggering achievement of precision. It contains an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks. Its orientation on the four cardinal points is accurate to better than 1/15 of 1 degree, a feat that modern surveyors with advanced tools would struggle to match. The base is perfectly level across an area of 13 acres, with less than an inch of variation. This level of precision proves that the workforce was highly skilled and controlled by an architectural mind, Hemiunu, operating under the absolute, unwavering mandate of the god-king Khufu. Part 5. Solving the Colossal Calculus. Chapter 5. The Ramp Debate and the Internal Solution. The greatest architectural puzzle remains. How were the 2 million core blocks, weighing on average 2.5 tons each, raised hundreds of feet to the top? For centuries, the debate has centered on the nature of the ramps. The straight ramp fallacy. The initial, most obvious theory proposed a single, colossal straight ramp running perpendicular to one face of the pyramid. However, simple geometry proves this impossible. A 481-foot-high ramp requires a shallow angle, less than 7 degrees, to be feasible for hauling stones. Such a ramp would need to be over a mile long and contain a volume nearly equal to the pyramid itself, an immense, unnecessary project that would have to be entirely demolished afterwards. The spiral ramp solution. Most Egyptologists now favor a combination of ramps. The lower two-thirds of the pyramid may have been constructed using smaller, switchback ramps clinging to the sides, or one large wraparound ramp that ascended on a gentle slope across all four faces. The ramps were built using the readily available material, rubble and mud brick.
For the last 150 feet, where the base area shrinks rapidly, Houdan suggests the remaining blocks were hauled through a ramp built inside the pyramid structure. This theory explains the mysterious V-shaped notches found on the edges of the pyramid that seem to serve no external purpose. These would have been necessary to rotate the long stones around the internal corners of the ramp. In the 1980s, French scientists detected density anomalies within the Great Pyramid consistent with a hidden, hollow spiraling structure, potential evidence for this internal ramp. In the 1980s, French scientists detected density anomalies within the Great Pyramid consistent with a hidden, hollow spiraling structure, potential evidence for this internal ramp. In the 1980s, French scientists detected density anomalies within the Great Pyramid consistent with a hidden, hollow spiraling structure, potential evidence for this internal ramp. The Egyptians, driven by logistical necessity, literally built the mechanism of construction into the architecture of the tomb itself, maximizing efficiency and minimizing the amount of external material required. The 80-ton problem, the power of water and man. While the core blocks were challenging, the truly impossible stones were the massive granite beams used to roof the king's chamber and the 5 relieving chambers above it. These stones, quarried 550 miles away in Aswan, weighed up to 80 tons each. 1. Water transport, Aswan to Giza. As discussed, the 80-ton granite blocks were moved from the Aswan quarries onto massive wooden barges. These barges floated down the Nile during the annual inundation when the river was highest and strongest, carrying the enormous load directly to the Khufu harbor complex at the foot of the Giza Plateau. 2. The final vertical lift. Getting the granite blocks to the height of the king's chamber, over 140 feet, was the hardest part. The method likely involved leverage and sheer manpower on a ramp that was reinforced specifically for the granite. Using wooden levers and ropes made from braided plant fiber, the Egyptians would have utilized a technique of slowly inching the blocks up the slope, potentially using oil or wet clay on the timbers to reduce friction even further than the wet sand used on the approach road. Every movement was a feat of unified, coordinated human strength under the command of the ZEP teams. The entire construction, therefore, was a perfectly choreographed dance between architecture, seasonal hydrology, and logistical genius. The builders were not brute slaves. They were high-value specialists who possessed mathematical knowledge, engineering skills, and a unified sense of national service unparalleled in the ancient world. Part 6. Legacy, Collapse, and the Enduring Mystery. Chapter 6. The Long Shadow of the Old Kingdom. The pyramid builders achieved their ultimate goal. Khufu's divinity was secured, and the cosmic order, Ma'at, was temporarily maintained. But the very power required to build the pyramids ultimately sowed the seeds of the Old Kingdom's collapse. The strain on the economy. While the pharaonic bureaucracy was astonishingly efficient, maintaining a state machine that fed 20,000 workers daily and administered the entire nation's resources for a single monarch's tomb was financially unsustainable. The cost of perpetual divine rule and the drain of resources to the central government eventually weakened the regional administrations, the momes. The rise of the nomarchs. As later pharaohs lacked Khufu's iron grip and architectural ambition, the nomarchs, regional governors, began to consolidate power and wealth locally. The ability to guarantee massive food rations and deploy a national workforce diminished. By the end of the Old Kingdom, the concept of a single, all-powerful god-king was fractured, leading to the First Intermediate Period, an era of political chaos and regional civil war. The pyramids stand today as a testament to the highest peak of pharaonic power, but also as a warning. When a single centralized authority demands too much for too long, even the most perfect bureaucratic machine will eventually break. The real secret: the pyramids were not built by magic, aliens, or slaves. They were built by the first organized national workforce, paid in the only currency that mattered, food security and guaranteed wages, utilizing revolutionary hydroengineering, and commanded by a calculating pharaoh whose intoxication with absolute, perfect order led him to create the greatest monument to human organization the world has ever seen.